Today on We Need to Talk, we cover part 2 of our talk about conspiracy theories. Not really, it's Skyquakes, or something. We need to talk.
So before others can get locked, I start going on. I'm like, hey, I'm seeing reports that this is a 4.0. Does anyone have proof? And there's another source. There were two big geological sources that I was actively following because people were saying sometimes earthquakes don't get announced right away and they come in a little bit later. So USGS, which is literally the government run tracking earthquakes, and then there's a smaller scale one called Volcano Discovery, where when people experience earthquakes, it's like a mass source where you can go on and report, here's where I was, what I heard, what magnitude it felt like to me, things like that. So there were like 400 and something reports on Volcano Discovery specifically, this random obscure website that said they all felt it. And it was it showed like the range of where they felt it, and it was within that 100-mile diameter. And people, I put in a report, and then when you've put in a report, it shows like what the amalgamation of all of that was. So it said, this may have been the 4.0 earthquake. So people started posting that picture because to them, the 4.0 earthquake meant, okay, this was a 4.0 earthquake.
It presupposes there was a 4.0
Right,
earthquake.
which according to Volcano Discovery, there was, because all of these people are saying there was. So like, okay, this is the same. You may be talking about this event that people are talking about, but the way they phrased it made it sound like this is a confirmed thing now. So people started saying confirmed, and then when I was asking for a source before they locked the post, I was like, the second I saw somebody say that, I would like immediately, source. I need a source. Give me any sort of a source, because I'm not looking to debunk this, right? I'm not looking to say like, no, it wasn't an earthquake. I'm looking to say, it was an earthquake and I have a source, but there was nothing that I could find. And people were posting Volcano Discovery, and it was always the same screenshot. So one person took a screenshot of it, and then everyone was taking it and sharing it around and closing their posts. So I went on Volcano Discovery and I looked up all of the most recent ones in the area, all the most recent earthquakes, and the 4.0 earthquake that we're talking about, that screenshot was from, literally says at the top, but you have to go in like a different way. You can't go in after you've reported. It's weird. And it says unconfirmed 4.0 earthquake at 11:45 on the 10th of this month. So it was very clearly unconfirmed that this was just a speculation thing.
Yep.
But people were misinterpreting that one screenshot because it wasn't done correctly. So now I'm trying to show people like, no, this isn't the case. Like, look, it's still showing as unconfirmed. Do you have a screenshot that shows it is confirmed? And nobody can provide me with anything. And that all the posts are now closed. I can't post on any of them, including the town page ones. Those are all closed now. So I reached out to one of the guys the first one who I saw post that screenshot, and all the others started copying. And I asked him, hey, do you have a source for this? Because I show that Volcano Discovery is unconfirmed still, and I sent him the screenshot. And I'll quote his response. He said, the problem everybody's having is there's so many conflicting reports as in a too many chiefs, not enough Indians type situation. The National Weather Service is posted about it in other outlets, but nothing is 100% confirmed. I'm confirming it over what I've found. Also monitoring area fire department scanners. They've also confirmed it being an earthquake type situation. I use fire departments as a legit source because of the information they provide. Once more stuff becomes I'm guessing it will be posted. So the fire department is saying this is an earthquake type situation. And there's speculation posts. And he's like, okay, I'm confirming it. Like, that's not how confirming works. You need proof to confirm it, not mass speculation says this is probably. That's not confirmation.
Yeah, and it's definitely a judgment call. And does this guy have some sort of credence to himself, or like everything is going to come down to a judgment call? But if this guy is not like a geologist or someone who at least has some sort of expertise, right? Like his judgment maybe isn't great, which is why you need someone else to confirm it, like some other source.
Exactly.
That has that authority.
Exactly. So then suddenly everyone stops talking about it. Any open posts that are left, there's like 2. Stop. Twitter. Nobody's saying anything on Twitter anymore. Everything stops.
Again, like, I hate to go the conspiracy route here, but this sounds more and more like a conspiracy, right?
There were about, I think in the next like hour, there were like 5 people who posted, and all they said was, yeah, heard it in Concord. Yeah, heard it in Goffstown. But it was like everything stopped, right? So posts have closed. Yep. All mentioning of this is gone. People are confirming unconfirmed stuff as, well, this is what happened. So I'm like, is everybody going to move on now? And like, I'll never know. I just wasted like 2 hours pumping information, like just scraping the dregs of the internet for information. Then WMUR comes out and updates their post. And they say, here's a thing that happened. Here's a couple eyewitnesses and what they had to say. Here's the furthest places we found. We reached out to the USGS, and they said this was definitely not an earthquake. They said we reached out to this guy. They gave a name. They said, he said, I went back and I checked all records in New Hampshire the past week, and there was nothing. Then they also said, we also reached out to the military and asked them, and they said there were no military aircrafts in the area and nobody broke the sound barrier, which is against the law over land. The military is not allowed to do that. Like that, you can get like court-martialed for it.
Yeah. It used to be legal back in the day, and then just so many people complained about it, at least in like on U.S. soil, that they made it against the law.
And then that was it. No one mentioned the incident in any sort of official capacity again for a very, very, very long time. At least the rest of the day. And High Strangeness now is blowing up. My post was like over 200 upvotes on this relatively small, like the post itself, 1.4 thousand upvotes. So
how many upvotes was it again?
There was 1.4 thousand upvotes for the post itself. OP posted the original poster posted the WMUR article, and now mine was up over 200 upvotes. So we're talking 20% of people were like, "Yup, upvote that bad boy." So I'm like looking everywhere. I messaged WMUR on Twitter because they posted a post about it, and I reposted it on my page because people were following me now for updates on this. And I was like, WMUR, please get to the bottom of what this is, because they ended their post with like, and nobody knows what it is still. We'll let you know if we find anything out. And I'm like, WMUR, please do not let this just disappear. I'm like, please figure out what the bottom of this is. I sent the post to that guy who was like, yeah, I confirm it's an earthquake. And I was like, so now that it's not an earthquake for sure, do you have any sort of because I was being super nice because like I wanted information out of him, right? So I'm like, so I need to know, was there, like, do you know anything else? Like, what's going on from your perspective? And he's like, nope, nobody knows anything. Towns went out. No one could find anything. There was no explosions of any sort. There was no, it's obviously not an earthquake, not a sonic boom. Like it, no one knows what anything is. So he's like, yep, it is what it is. I'm not worried. And I'm like, okay, this is like, what the hell happened? Who knows? At the gets to like the nighttime, and I'm like, okay, we're just never gonna know. I never get to know what happened because nobody has found anything out. So I'm like trying to think of more obscure things as to like what this could be, and I'm looking. I remember, okay, on High Strangeness they said like there were other booms, and so I start looking into that now, right? And there are a massive amount of these that did make the news that were unresolved all over the US. So now I start compiling those. So I start compiling a list of dates and states and where these things are happening. And I have reports all the way back to like March 2012. There was one explosion that reached from Alabama and Georgia to Wisconsin. It was like a 3-state huge boom. Never was explained. 2018, 2019, 2020. And I dug hard in 2021, and I had January in Florida, January in Arkansas, February in California, February in Massachusetts. There were 2. March in California, April in Massachusetts, June in California, August in Massachusetts, September in North Carolina, Arizona, Tennessee, and the one in New Hampshire. And all of these went completely unexplained. There was a 2014 BBC article about mysterious booms that just like happen sometimes in the UK. There was a 2020 general just article about these types of explosions. So like, I'm not the first person to start digging into this and being like, what is this and why is it happening all across the US and no one can explain it? 2015 article that started as an article about something that happened in Washington State, but then went on to explain that like while they were digging, they found this is literally all over the world, to the point and this led me to something called Seneca guns. So in New York, there's this phenomena called Seneca guns. So they're these mysterious earth-shaking booms, and they're all across the U.S. Northeast coast, but especially in North Carolina and in New York on the lakes. So there are big booms. The name Seneca guns, I'm going to read from livescience.com. The name Seneca guns comes not from North Carolina, but from Lake Seneca in upstate New York, where a similar phenomena occurred. The lake's ominous booming sounds, which were first described in an 1850, by the writer James Fenimore Cooper in his short story, The Lake Gun. Had at the time been heard for centuries. It is a sound resembling the explosion of a heavy piece of artillery that can be accounted for by none of the known laws of nature. Cooper wrote, The report is deep, hollow, distant, and imposing. The lake seems to be speaking to the surrounding hills, which send back the echoes of its voice in accurate reply. No satisfactory theory has ever been broached to explain these noises. All over the world. So there are different places all over the world that have different names for this, because, that's how regional stuff works, is everywhere across the world, this phenomena exists. They call it Brontidi in Bangladesh. They're Barasil guns. The U.S. call them Seneca guns or Moodus noises, Bama quakes when it happened in Alabama. But the most colloquial for all of the U.S. is Skyquakes. And this goes all the way back to when settlers came from Europe to America, the natives would talk about these and say, yeah, that just happens sometimes. It's God still creating the earth. He's still hammering out the earth. But since the time of like before colonialization of America, this is a thing that's been happening and it's still unexplained.
So, all right. Is that where everything ends, though? It doesn't seem likely, because it sounds like there might be an answer there, but unfortunately, the answer is just like something that happened, but nobody can explain.
The best I could find is that they think it has something to do with high and low pressure systems meeting, but that as a phenomena as a whole, it is unexplainable. And it has never been explained to this day by experts, by everybody. And that is, I mean, that was the final say in regards to the Skyquakes as a whole. As for the New Hampshire thing, specifically this one, WMUR came out on Monday, the 11th, at 5:30 at night. So now it's been a day and a half. And they came out with a report that says scientists say the loud boom heard in southern New Hampshire might have been a meteor. They think a meteor entered the atmosphere at supersonic speed, broke the sound barrier, and caused that boom. And since it was in the sky, it would never be picked up through the ground, but it would also reach a very huge area. And when a meteor enters into the atmosphere at that speed, it causes a flash like lightning. And that got picked up by meteorologists. They found that flash. Looking for where it says. Scientists said that while a meteor is likely the cause, the only way to prove it is if someone saw it.
Yeah, and it's unlikely that someone would see it as easily during the daytime. Just contrast.
And on top of that, it was overcast that day. So because it was overcast across much of the region Sunday morning, there might not be any evidence of a meteor. So that is literally just their best guess. But this is a phenomena that happens everywhere, all across the world. Like, this is a really cool thing for people to look into, especially if you like conspiracy theories. Of course, on Reddit, there were tons of different suggestions. There was most people saying they thought it was an earthquake or a jet. Or they're like, even if, I know you guys said that it wasn't a jet because the military said, but if the military did do that, you really think they'd admit to it? And then there were a lot of people saying they were dumbs, which I had to look into, which is deep underground military bunkers, which are actually, as I was researching it, a legitimate thing that exist. And we put like billions of dollars towards, it was like $500 billion or something towards creating them in the US, like within the last 5 years, specifically because they have a ton of underground bunkers in Russia and North Korea. That's in there's a lot of like narrow hallways and things like that, subway systems. So if we were to ever need the military in those situations, we need them to be able to be trained to handle those situations. So creating these deep underground military bunkers are important for our military to be able to train properly in how to attack or defend in those said situations.
Yeah, I actually think they made some of those a while back, though. but more for the purpose of nuclear bombs, because I think during the Cold War, or maybe a little bit before that, they're worried about like a nuclear strike and it just demolishing like the military. So they made some deep underground military compounds where essentially they would be safe from the nuclear bombs.
Yeah, there are definitely some of those as well. A lot of people saying that they were maybe it's quarry work. And New Hampshire has a lot of granite, which holds vibration very well. So thinking maybe there was quarry work that was a big blast that ended up like shaking all around the whole state. And, most of these are very far-fetched and just people just throwing out random ideas. A lot of your mom jokes, like a lot. A lot of your mom was jumping jacks, your mom fell down, things like that.
Yeah, the quarry idea, the explosion idea doesn't just sound very likely to me, because that has to be a super massive explosion, and that's just hard to like cover up. Potentially, if the explosion transferred to the ground, maybe most of the ground, the earth kind of picked up that, but then you'd see that on the earthquake records. So it doesn't seem that likely.
There was one guy early on the Milford, New Hampshire town page. He's one of the guys who runs it. And he had said it's probably just a meteor breaking through the atmosphere at supersonic speed. And it burnt up in the atmosphere and we'll never find record of it. And that ended up being what the official release said. Like, this is what it was. So I was really impressed because when he had said that, I'm like, you know what? He's probably right. And that's what I started saying was the most realistic thing I've seen people say is that it's probably a meteor. So shout out to him. I won't dox you live, but that was a really good guess because honestly, that is what I think it was probably a meteor. And maybe that's the case, in a lot of places is that it's that maybe all of these aren't connected. They're all kind of like they all have their own reason for these things happening. But it is very interesting to see how many of these stay unconfirmed over time.
Yeah. And I guess it's a couple of different things there because I agree the meteor is probably the most likely explanation. And also that would fit a criteria there for it being sustained, right? Because like an explosion is like one event and it kind of proliferates, right? A meteor, like if it's breaking through that atmosphere or whatever, it's going to be sustaining that kind of sound, right? And so that would explain some reasons. Also, it doesn't have to travel, like the air doesn't have to travel through different objects because you think about like it going through on the ground, it has to go through all trees, the houses, right? There's just a lot of objects that sound and energy gets transferred into, where it's just pure air. Now, of course, it's very high up, so that might counteract it to some degree, but still, that's probably the most likely. Also, there are a lot of meteors that we don't realize that come through the atmosphere. Most of them come through, we don't even notice because they burn up before we even could notice them. But yeah. I just remember like, a couple of weeks ago, I was, just on picnic table looking up at the night sky and just surprised how many little like shooting stars I was seeing. It's like way more than you might think.
Yeah. Now, I mean, a lot of that is like within the visible spectrum of being able to see something flying by in space, which is pretty likely. But the fact that it would hit this tiny little planet is much less likely. Granted, we have the size of our planet and then the size of our gravitational pull is going to be a bit bigger than that. But even still, it's tiny compared to the amount of space we can see a shooting star in. But there's a lot of just shit out there in space. There are other hypotheses on Wikipedia. If you look up Skyquakes, coronal mass ejections or CMEs, which is like the solar wind equivalent of a sonic boom. Coming off of the sun. So the sun spits stuff out and it makes a sonic boom. It accelerates protons up to millions of miles per minute, as much as 40% the speed of light. And then, so this is like literal physical stuff going almost half the speed of light. Meteors, gas, which is maybe it's escaping from vents in the earth, or with lakes like biogas from things decaying, vegetation decaying beneath the lake, or explosive releases of like non-volatile or less volatile gases in as limestone decays, military aircrafts creating sonic booms, shallow earthquakes, underwater caves collapsing, magnetic shit going on, which we don't fully understand how magnet shit works, volcanic eruptions, avalanches, atmospheric ducting, where there's distant thunder or other sounds that just like travel long distances because of the way that atmospheric layers work. So there's tons of different explanations, and every single one of these could explain away a different story, and they could all be right, you know?
Yep. Yeah, and I suppose I guess there's two main thoughts to this. Number one is that we pretend like everything is knowable, but really it's only knowable with enough data. And if we don't have the data, we can't make a decision on what it was, right? Like in this case, what we need is some sort of concrete evidence that there was something in the sky, right? There's a little bit of evidence for that. And, there's a lack of evidence that there's an earthquake, right? So there's these different, compounding factors, but it's kind of like, can we really say we have enough evidence to prove it one way or the other? The answer is no. Kind of like same thing with like things in the sky. Like people see things in the sky all the time and they make claims, this is that, this is this. I mean, unless you have evidence, like really strong evidence for what it was, you can't really say. You just say, oh, we don't really know what it was, but we know something was there, right? And here, we don't even know that thing was there, so it could have been in the sky, it could not have been, right? It could have been something else.
Yep. But,
and I think,
go ahead.
And I think the other thing that's kind of interesting with this is, I don't think this is intentional, but the way you're kind of describing the story out, it makes me think that maybe in some of the ways internet culture works, makes it susceptible for conspiracy theories. Because it almost sounded like I don't have a very conspiracy laced mind because I don't know. I approach things with too much like skepticism, but a conspiracy theorist will obviously look at that and say, oh, all these people are all of a sudden editing their posts and say, hey, it's not this, it's not this. It sounds like, someone's kind of forcing to do that. Like there's some sort of like hand being played there. And then like with the different news sources and everything doing it. Now, obviously it doesn't seem like that. I think it's more an effective groupthink, right? And people just not verifying sources, or they don't want to look wrong, so they edit it. So I think there's other social dynamics there. But I think post facto, or as you're going through it, that kind of behavior kind of looks like a conspiracy.
It does.
In a way, it kind of is, though, right? Because people are trying to not be wrong about something, so people are conspiring to not be wrong and kind of post factual information, which in that case, that is kind of conspiring towards an end. But it's just not for any one person's goals, for their individual self-satisfaction.
And I mean, when you're in the position I was in, which is trying to compile enough information to find the truth and not accepting not truth as truth just because I want an explanation, like trying to find what the actual answer was, when all of a sudden everything that you've been tracking just goes away all at once, it's a very startling and unsettling feeling to be like, everybody is saying like this wrong information. And I don't like to jump to conspiracy theories. I love the idea of conspiracy theories. I like the headspace of like playing around in that area, but I would never like actually believe that, like, oh, the government is getting involved in shutting down random Facebook posts. That doesn't make sense. But when it happened like live, that crossed my mind, like it had to, as did like, now I'm like, am I going to go out into the world and talk to people and then they're going to be like, oh yeah, remember that earthquake? And I'll be like, no, it wasn't an earthquake. Is that going to be what people remember from this, and it's not the truth. And if that's the case, how often does that happen? It's a scary thought that, like, just because 3 people posted a bunk, like, misinformation picture, everybody on the internet decided, okay, that's what happened. And now nobody is going to look into it any further.
Yep. Yep. And it's just kind of taken as fact, which happens a lot with news too. There's a scientific study that they did on monkeys, I believe it was. Might be another primate, but I believe it was, let's just say it was monkeys. But it's like they had them in this enclosure, and then at the top, like there's this little platform at the top that had bananas on it. And essentially, whenever the monkeys would try to go up there to get the bananas, they'd get shocked, right?
Yeah.
So they learned pretty quickly, let's not go up and get that banana. And over time, they started switching out the monkeys and bringing in new ones. And so when other monkeys tried to go up there, the monkeys that were experiencing the shocks were like, hey, no, don't. And kind of taught them not to, right? And eventually they switched out to all monkeys who had never been shocked, don't have shock collars on. And, you know, they got reinforced by the monkeys who were reinforced by the other monkeys, the initial ones. And none of these monkeys would go up against bananas, although they had no reason to do it besides other monkeys warning them or telling them not to. And I think that's a good instance here where you can kind of get this behavior where people self-confirm each other, and you have this meme passing on from person to person that's never checked, never verified, just taken on its face, and that could lead to something being missed that maybe was very important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This did lead me in 2 other minor directions. One of them was somebody on Reddit was like, oh, I know what it was. It was definitely these kids. You know the ones. They're the ones that are related to the person who does the things. And we all know about it, but no one will say anything. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? And he's like, you know, the people who no one wants to talk about it and no one will do anything about it until somebody gets hurt. And I'm like, dude, I live in the area and I have no idea what you're talking about. He's like, you know, all the explosions. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you don't live in the area. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I definitely live in the area. Like, what the fuck are you on about right now? He's like, what difference does it make? I'm like, will you at least like give a name of who you're talking about or like anything that could lead me? He's like, why? I'm like, because I want to look into this now. This is fucking interesting. He's like, what does it matter what some random on the internet says? I'm not going to put my family at risk by saying a name. If you live in the area, you already know. I'm like, okay, I'm done with you, but that's fucking weird.
Yeah. That's almost similar to this whole like CIA, FBI sort of troll thing. Or I don't know what it is exactly, but it's like a big thing that got popularized by Alex Jones, where it's like either people agree with you, or if they don't, they are like an FBI informant, right? Or, okay, good example with this, like there's scientists that will speak out against the Earth being round, apparently, right? So, you know, they are speaking truth, they're standing up to power. All the scientists that are saying the Earth is round, though, they're globalist conspiracists, and they're being paid by the CIA and FBI to, you know, spread these lies, right? And then if one of your friends is, say, believes in a round Earth, or sorry, they believed in a flat Earth, but now they believe in a round Earth, somehow they're connected to conspiracy, because obviously, you know, what other reason would they have to believe theirs is round? Like, I'm short selling this because I just think it's a stupid, I don't know. I'm not presenting this in favorable terms here, I don't feel like, but it's kind of that kind of crap where everyone's paid off who doesn't agree with you.
Yeah. And I mean, that's wild. For sure. That leads, so I have one more thing I want to bring up in regards to this weird phenomena that I kind of stumbled into. And to anyone who's interested in any of this, please do some research, because if you like the headspace of conspiracy theories and you like diving into it, there is a lot to dive into here, and not a lot of people know about this, right? Nate, did you know anything about Skyquakes before I started talking about them?
I would say that no, I didn't realize that was a thing. I think I've heard about like unexplained sounds and event stuff like that, but more in like a general context. And usually I just attribute it to people being crazy or just like making stuff up or over exemplifying their mind, because the memory is just so bad. People will take something and they will just amplify it up to like 11 in their head, and not that they're crazy for that, but it's just what people do. So I'd say no, but even if I had heard that was a thing, I think people were just being kind of ridiculous.
So if you are interested in conspiracy theories and you want a new one that there is a lot of room to learn and maybe be on the forefront of discovering some stuff, Skyquakes, look them up. But when I was looking up Skyquakes, it led me down a Wikipedia rabbit hole to other unexplained sounds. And there's one in particular that I just want to bring up because I think it's short, but it's also interesting. And it's called the Forest Grove Sound. So the Forest Grove Sound, and I'm on Wikipedia, was an unexplained noise described by the Oregonian, which is like a newspaper, as a mechanical scream that was heard in Forest Grove, Oregon in February 2016. So in February 2016, there was like this high-pitched noise, and the Department of Forestry determined that, it wasn't any of their equipment that was causing the sound. So, and the news was first shared by a guy named Dave Meader, who posted a video of it on the city's Facebook page. So the Washington Post described it as like a giant flute played off pitch, car brakes, or a steam whistle. NBC described it as akin to a bad one-note violin solo broadcast over a microphone with nonstop feedback. It reportedly lasts from 10 seconds to several minutes. The fire department did not consider it to be like a safety risk of any source. And neither the city public works department or the fire department were able to explain the noise in any regards. According to NW Natural, there were no problems with gas lines in the area. And Andrew Dawes, a professor of physics at Pacific University, mapped the locations where the noise had been heard. And although the results were inconclusive, it did not suggest any single location. So throughout February of 2016, there were approximately 200 calls made to the Forest Grove Police Department, according to their captain, Mike Erb, who said that most of the calls were suggesting explanations for the sound, ranging from frogs to aliens and Bigfoot. In late February 2016, the police department announced via Facebook that the noise did not pose a safety hazard, and they were no longer going to investigate until further information appeared. And then the noise stopped.
Okay. So see, this had me all like, okay, it sounds just like something, but then the noise stops when they refuse to, investigate. That just sounds kind of weird.
It's so weird. It's so weird. So the final point went on the map that Dawes was making. The police and fire department closed the case. And the fire marshal came out and said, it was probably a faulty attic fan or a heat pump. And that's the end.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, not very satisfying.
Well, it's not.
That's the problem.
Go ahead.
The explanation is not satisfying at all, and people who were following this just feel like there's something weird going on. Like, I don't know. I don't know what it'd be, but it's like I'm just thinking about my own behavior, and I'm not saying I'm a bad person necessarily, but, there's been times where I maybe have been doing something, and usually I haven't realized it was a bad thing, or it wasn't, like, a great thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm forgetting to put something back where it belonged, right? And, I get like it kind of gets called out, and people just start just having this big kind of talk about it. Of course, I just kind of keep my mouth shut, and then maybe I'm the manager here. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna look into it, and then I just stop doing it, right? so worst example I could give, but yeah, I can imagine myself being in their position. Like, this shit that we've been doing, they're hearing it. Let's stop and just pretend like it's case closed, because we were the case.
Oh, okay. I didn't consider that maybe it was them the whole time.
That's where my conspiracy brain goes, but that's how I would handle it. If I was creating this sound and then it starts getting like complaints about it, I'm not going to admit that I'm doing it. I'm just going to be like, okay, we're going to research this. Okay, we can't find anything, so we're just going to close the case, and then let's just suddenly stop doing it.
So go to admin chat, and I posted a link to the Twitter that has the actual sound. So there is this sound. You can actually hear it yourself. I don't know if you want to drop it into the episode or not. That's up to you. People could find it on their own. It is loud and annoying.
Yeah, I'm going to play it right here. Yeah, so this definitely just sounds like a flute. Yeah, and a little bit loud and annoying, it's for certain. So yeah, I'm gonna stop playing that. It honestly, my more realistic thought of what it could be, and this gets kind of weird. I know the physicists looked at it and said that there's nothing that would be that explainable with it. But I still have this belief that you can get these natural kind of resonances, like these natural weird physical phenomena that are very unlikely and very like unexplainable in any sort of like real way, but they could still happen. Like the way to think about it is like you think of like a wine glass. If you or like say a bottle, for instance. So you take a bottle and you kind of blow into it. Eventually you kind of get it kind of giving that response, and that's because this bottle has some sort of natural like resonant frequency. And technically everything has that natural resonant frequency, and in a way that force might have some sort of weird frequency if the air pressure is just right. Again, that's a far-fetched kind of claim, but I think theoretically it's possible that something like that could occur. You would be possible for you to determine that, though, because that force is so complex that the way for you to calculate that was the case is pretty much null, right? Like, good luck.
But what are the chances that something like that, like that perfect situation happens for 2 weeks and that's it? Ever. Before or after?
Well, I think we've yet to see it happen again. And
it's only a matter of time, Forest Grove. The sound's coming back.
If this is the only time it's ever happened, then that's unlikely, right? Because we're probably going to see those conditions again. But there might have happened beforehand and people just didn't know, recorded or something. I don't know. It's a lot of possibilities.
Yeah. But there's a lot of stuff like that. So if you like conspiracy theories, if you like unexplained phenomena, if you like finding the truth, this is a very deep. Laughing. I said finding the truth. Pepper starts like fucking almost spits his water out.
It just sounds like you're like diving deep into like long conspiracies.
Did I not? I spent a whole day.
You gotta go deeper.
I spent a whole day on this, Nathan. A whole day of my life that I could have been doing something productive.
So this is like the worst sunk cost fallacy I've ever seen. Like, I've done so much research on, this conspiracy topic that I have to become a conspiracy theorist. It would be a waste of my time if I didn't.
It would be unethical for me to not be a conspiracy theorist at this point. Uneconomic. So I want you to become a conspiracy theorist too. So do some research. Skyquakes, unexplained sounds. It's all really, really interesting. And I think A lot of people are going to find this interesting and won't accept that, oh, meteorologist said, it was probably a meteor, whatever. Was it though? Who knows? Good thing to start looking into, and maybe you'll be the one to uncover the truth. And when you do, don't forget to credit us so we can get some money.
Yep. My guess is probably swamp gas for all those things, though.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest.
Swamp gas is usually the explanation.
Yeah. And if you have some swamp gas, definitely leave us a like, a comment, and subscribe. I don't know where I'm going.
Subscribe.
This is a different show as well. I mean, you don't do that with a podcast. God damn.
Yeah, we do.
Do they? Can they subscribe?
Yeah.
How?
You go onto your podcast catcher, whatever podcast app you use, and you hit the subscribe button. And then we pop up in your feed every week.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. And then I guess if they want to leave a review, there's like iTunes. I think Stitcher you can do reviews in. Spotify, I think you can leave a rating for it. I might be wrong in that. But yeah, hey, definitely go in there, say, hey guys, you're great. Let's give you publicity here because this is a conspiracy we're launching, to get you guys to make us look good.
Yes. And if you do find stuff out, or you find other really cool conspiracies or sound-related things, let us know, please. Like Discord, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. I will see it, and maybe we'll bring it up on the show again and have a follow-up episode about it, because I think this is really cool.
I think the only place you should not contact us is probably OnlyFans. Because it's a strict, we send you messages, but you don't send us messages.
Exactly that. So, Nate, how many things in your life have been explainable by swamp gas?
Well, I guess my birth was the first thing.
Nate, we need to talk.